Hi everyone, I'm Kyle Dyer and welcome to Colorado Inside Out on this Friday, May the 31st. Let me introduce you to our insiders, our panel, as we talk about this primary month we're entering here in Colorado. We have Patty Calhoun, founder and editor of Westward, David Kopel, the research director at the Independence Institute, Ed Sealover, Vice President of Strategic Initiatives at the Colorado Chamber of Commerce and the editor of The Sum and Substance, and Laura Aldrete, a city building consultant and former planning director for the city and county of Denver. This summer is here, and there is a renewed focus on safety in Colorado. CDOT says fatal car crashes go up by 30% in the summertime in Colorado, so please be careful on the roads. But when it comes to other safety precautions, there has been a lot of talk this week, and it seems to be some different messaging as well. In Denver earlier this week, on Wednesday, the mayor's office posted a photo with the current heads of safety departments saying that this is the group that's going to keep us safe. Yet at the same time, earlier this week, the Johnson administration faced allegations of lowering safety standards to fill open positions. And there have also been reports of drones replacing patrols out in the streets in not just Denver, but other municipalities. So, Patty, let's start with you and unpack all this.
Well, Tuesday got off to a wild start. So first you see Lauren Boebert going after Johnston because of the newcomer's guide to dealing with migrants. Then you see a press release coming out of the city, not the mayor's office, but a city address about a protest that's going to be out on the City Hall steps regarding Civil Service Commission and the concerns that the head has about the lowering of safety standards for new recruits. Then you have the announcement that that director is no longer employed by the city that came out later that day. And it ended with Mike Johnston taking off after Boebert and her behavior at Beetlejuice. So it was a wild day in Denver, and we are not done hearing about the Civil Service Commission yet. Kevin Flynn, who's graced this table before, has called for a hearing before the Safety Committee of Council to say just really what happened. So what happened with the firing? Mayor's office says the director was going to be let go on May 16th. That's when the decision was made. But it just happened to happen the day she is out there with 3 council people talking about their concerns about lowering quality for the new recruits.
David.
It is well known that police mediocrity is very dangerous. It leads to corruption and police brutality. And we ought to, instead of lowering standards, raise the pay to attract superior, high-quality recruits. The thing about traffic accidents and all that, that's a consequence of less traffic enforcement. And there's, all over the country, there's less traffic enforcement because of all the anti-police lies that were promulgated in 2020 and continue to infect society. The plans for hotspot policing of selected neighborhoods in Denver is great. You put the police where the crime is likely to occur. But we're still coming out of the disaster caused by the so-called Black Lives Matter Corporation, which has resulted in, among other things, vastly increased deaths of black people from criminals.
I think we still need some perspective on what's happening here. Chantel Lewis, the city councilwoman, releases this information that the standards of 70% for this police exam have dropped down to 65%. And I don't think anybody understands what that means quite yet. Have they dropped? Every story I've read kind of seems to insinuate, well, they may be dropping, but there hasn't been an official order in this. And what does this mean if you're getting 65% instead of 70% on an entrance exam? Does that really matter? Or as Johnston says, can we make up for it by just getting you through the academy and teaching you the basics of policing? The other thing that struck me about all this is that the folks who are among the most progressive and Democratic Socialists of America linked members of the city council who have been most active in criticizing the police over the past 4 to 5 years are now the ones saying, well, our standards aren't high enough. It seems ironic to me that people who've spent 5 years trashing a profession are now saying, well, why doesn't anyone want to be part of that profession who's any good? We really need to look inward and ask if our attitudes toward policing are going to be what we need to fix in order to get better recruits.
Laura.
Well, a couple points. I want to respond to that, but the first thought I had when it was announced that there was this quick action from the mayor's office is just to reach a campaign promise was, are we starting to see a pattern from this administration where the number one objective is to reach a number, not have a sustainable qualitative response in the government policy system to actually make long-standing change, right? Or are we just trying to hit a number? I think to the points about policing and what is policing, and the benefits that came from the last year's targeted 6 communities prior, some of it was about bringing more police into those communities. A lot of it was about how police engaged with community, right? Just having more police with guns out in those neighborhoods is not necessarily, it might momentarily curb violence, but there is a lot more work to be done in terms of connecting with community and building those relationships.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ballots are heading out over the next week in advance of Colorado's primary on Tuesday, June the 25th. We are now seeing campaign commercials for congressional candidates. There are new polling numbers for those candidates as well. And probably most importantly, the voting machines are being tested out and checked to make sure they are ready for the big day. David, I will start with you.
Okay, let's talk about this, some Republican congressional primaries.
Okay.
4th Congressional District, the Eastern Plains. It takes a special Republican to be able to lose that race. Last one who pulled that off was Marilyn Musgrave in 2008 in the Obama landslide. Lauren Boebert can do the same thing because she makes Musgrave look sedate and moderate. She's 10 points behind the Democrats' best candidate, who is Ike McCorkle, and it's a large field, and so she could win that primary with a plurality. In the 5th CD, which is centered in El Paso County, it takes a once-in-a-generation political talent for a Republican to lose that race, and Dave Williams could be the man. He is by far the sleaziest state party chair in my lifetime. And then CD5 is the West Slope, and there the Republican Suicide Squad is backing Ron Hanks, even though the other Republican, Jeff Hurd, who actually chased Boebert out of that district, would be a sure winner in the general election.
Okay.
So I want to flip to the other side of this, and the Group Americans for Prosperity is backing Jeff Hurd, is backing Jeff Crank in the 5th CD, and is backing Gabe Evans in the 8th CD, which is another race where the Republican Party has weighed in behind Janet Joshi, a man who was ousted in a primary from his state house seat because he was not viewed as doing the job by many of his constituents. It is ironic to me that 10 years ago, maybe not even that long ago, the Koch brothers were the evil ones. They were the ones who were going to destroy America. And now their group, Americans for Prosperity, is promoting the ones that our Republican Party says aren't Republican enough. I think, to put an emphasis on Dave's point, this is a battle for the soul of the Republican Party. Is this going to be Trump's party, or is this going to be the traditional party that used to come under criticism for being small government and low taxes? And I think in each of those districts, it's going to be very apparent come June 26th where our Republican Party stands.
Okay. All right. Laura.
Well, I think across the board, I'm disappointed to see the rhetoric happening in all the districts on sometimes, and the play, right, on both sides of the aisle. And I really hope that Democrat and Republican voters demand critical thinking and actual problem solving in policy issues, as opposed to for example, Boebert's rhetoric around immigration, gun control, orientation, right? All that is doing is fomenting fear and hate, and that is no way to lead. That is no way to make decisions. And so I just hope we stand up as a citizenry to vote not just with a knee-jerk reaction. I will say, I think we are so lucky to live in a state that is tremendous on the voting, on ensuring that we have got secure and safe voting, and that voting is getting to all those who are eligible to vote. So I'm really proud about that in our state.
Yeah, we are strong in that way.
And remember, unaffiliated can vote in the primary only in one primary, Republican or Democrat, but when you have the largest group in the state is unaffiliated, they can really swing things. I have to disagree that we won't necessarily know on June 26th, what the Colorado Republican Party is, because the problem is, say, with Boeberts in the 4th District, with 6 candidates, you could take that with not a large percentage of the vote. So Lauren Boebert could come out on top, even though most people in the 4th are upset that she's a carpetbagger, that they don't like a lot of her policies. They might like her making fun of Mike Johnston, but she could come up with 20% of the vote and win. And that's not going to say that's where the Colorado Republicans, small Colorado Republicans, the people who believe in small government, the Pete Coors, the Ken Bucks, the people who used to run the Republican Party in the state, we may not see what the Republican Party is. We might just see a little game of math.
Ballots will also have a lot of names. Yes, we have the congressional races, but there are there are state legislative races that we are going to be deciding this primary, and then in November. I'm going to start with you, Ed, because you cover a lot with the General Assembly, and it'll be interesting to see how this election turns out and what our new legislative session will look like next year.
Yeah, to answer your question, I really hope that it's a heavy turnout because people should be paying attention. In addition to the congressional races, these state Senate and state House races that affect them even more are very contested, and they are in some ways a battle for the soul of parties too. I think we particularly see that in the Democratic Party, where you have sitting legislators, Elizabeth Epps, Tim Hernandez, Junie Joseph, 3 of the most liberal legislators in the state house, are all being targeted in primaries by more moderate Democratic opponents, saying, not only do I not like their stances, but I don't like the way they go about their jobs. And I think that is, after we've seen, there's been much made of the Republican Party going right. Clearly, the Democratic Party has been going left for about the past 6 years. This is the first real attempt I've seen to rein it back in some ways. Meanwhile, the same is true in many Republican races. I mean, I could think of places, Castle Rock, northern El Paso County, and one district that runs all the way up from Wellington up into the Eastern Plains, in which you really see this same kind of congressional conundrum of more moderate or at least more pragmatic Republicans running against very Trump-focused Republicans. So I hope people are paying attention to the state house races. It's a good time to decide where you want your party and where you want your state legislature to be.
You're right. You're right. Yeah.
I think turnout is going to be all about the sparkle, right? So if you've got, if you as a candidate are want to stand out on a particular policy issue or agenda item and have that sparkle, people are going to come out and vote for you. And on June 21st, or 25th, sorry. Whether I like that or not, as opposed to what is pragmatic, to your point, which I think I think the state of Colorado has more of a history of being pragmatic and moderate, more or less in the last probably 25, 30 years. But we continue to want to reach for that shiny object that I think, that we, as we were just discussing, right? Like whoever can make the most egregious comment tends to get the attention. And it's unfortunate. And it's not the Colorado that I have, been born and raised in. And I hope we are moving on both sides, moving back to that pragmatic, moderate decision-making as opposed to the sparkle.
I hope so, because I don't like what I'm seeing online where
Yeah.
people from different districts are going after certain candidates. It's bad right now.
It's getting really ugly. And the problem is, when you talk about sparkle, if you're running for the state house, people aren't paying attention to whether you sparkle or are dull as a doornail. You just don't see it because people are paying attention to the other bigger races. And so unless you've got a candidate with a really good ground game, who knows how to get out, who's knocking on doors, who's getting their message out, the voters need to educate themselves. Media is stretched thin. As I said, you've got the sparkly Lauren Boeberts out there who get all the attention. And if you're looking at the legislature, you're going to have to educate yourself and figure out, where are these candidates? How do they agree with me or disagree with me? And who do I want? What do I want Colorado to look like? And it's going to be up to the voters.
What's your crystal ball say, David?
Well, Ed talked about, all of us, about these races between more ideologically extreme people versus pragmatists. The Boulder race of Junie Joseph, who has her Her opponent is very hardworking, has a good ground game, and those are important. But I think there's two races far more important, and that's the primaries with Tim Hernandez and Elizabeth Epps. You know, a century ago, when Mayor Benjamin Stapleton was aligned with the Ku Klux Klan, he tried to keep it quiet and secret. But Epps and Hernandez are very open fellow travelers with Hamas, an organization that, by what it says, is dedicated to the extermination of Jews. Political parties are meant to argue all the time about taxes, spending, regulation, and so on. No party should have candidates who are aligned with the destruction of the Jews.
I don't think either Epps or Hernandez are aligned with Hamas. I think they are pro-Palestinian. Whether I agree that we should be dipping into that conversation in House District 4 or 6 is another issue. But I just think, to clarify, I don't think they are Hamas supporters.
It used to be that Colorado Springs was an affordable place to live in our state, much more so than Denver, but that has changed. The cost of living in the Springs has gone up by 101% over the last 8 years, and there is a huge shortage of affordable housing. Laura, in your work as someone who worked with housing and city planning, how does a Springs get out of this? And they're not the only one. I mean, so many places in Colorado which is so affordable, but the numbers are pretty shocking from the Springs.
Sure, and the CSI report identifies the largest contributing factor to be that the wages are not keeping up with housing prices and rents. And that's really a factor, at least in the last 4 years, of seeing coastal workers being able to work remote and geographically locating in a great affordable city like Colorado Springs and bringing the economy of the East Coast or West Coast into Colorado Springs and into that housing market. So it's a complete disruption of the real estate market in, I would say, all of Colorado, right? Pick Salida, pick Carbondale, pick Denver. We are all experiencing this. Colorado Springs certainly is experiencing it perhaps worse than others. So not only Colorado, across the United States, we're seeing this. It is, in terms of solving for this, it's no silver bullet, right? So we have to look at middle income housing, funding opportunities. We have to keep pushing those federal funding opportunities. We need to reform zoning code in every city to help increase housing supply.
You know, you see these groundbreakings, but for one groundbreaking, how many other projects are being held up, you know, in the system?
And are the groundbreakings for affordable housing? Are they for mid-level housing? Or are they for expensive apartments, which we're seeing so much in Denver? We did see some good things coming out of the legislature that may help somewhat. I mean, you now can have more people in a dwelling. You know, it was always ludicrous that you had these antiquated rules in different cities. In Denver, you used to not be able to have two unmarried people living together. They had to be related. And now that's improved. You also have the ADUs, which, although local municipalities can make their own, could maybe override, but the state says you can create ADUs in certain areas. So that's great. Accessory dwelling units might be for a family member, might be something you rent. Let's hope it's not Airbnbs, and that's another issue. It's not just that people are moving here who have a lot of money. They're people who are buying up housing stock and using it for Airbnbs when in the old days, those would have been rentals. They would have been available for people who are living here and contributing to the economy, not just through a 5-day trip.
Part of the housing affordability problem is beyond Colorado's control. It's because interest rates on mortgages are much higher than they used to be, and that goes back to Trump and Biden printing so much funny money to finance their grossly irresponsible deficits. But there's also part of the problem that is self-inflicted, because on anything, when you reduce the supply, then the price goes up. You can see that in Boulder, which has had that kind of policy for years. It's great for people who already have houses. It keeps Boulder chill, but it also means that a lot of people who work in Boulder can't afford to live there. Same thing going on in Denver now. Colorado Springs, similar issue is, as the Common Sense Institute report explains, a key problem is the city is not issuing build permits for home construction at the rate of the increasing demand. So you have prices going up.
Yeah, I was looking here. Demand, you would have to build 32,000 homes in the Springs by 2028 to meet expected population growth, too. It's a lot of building.
You know, I want to piggyback on two things that were just said here. One, in terms of it being self-inflicted. It is self-inflicted in some ways because Colorado Springs has made itself a more attractive city. It is actually the place that you see that tops most lists of which Colorado cities are the best to move to over Denver, which, you know, or Fort Collins that used to top those lists. And so, yeah, the housing is going to get more expensive because more people want to live there. That's actually in some ways not as bad a problem as we think. It just means that it's a place you want to be. There are a lot of cities that would kill for that problem. However, the trick is going to be how do they respond to that? Patty mentioned some of the things that went on in the legislature this year. HB 1313 is the key bill really promoting more density around transit-oriented communities. Colorado Springs doesn't have a big transit center, though. They don't have a rail line. They don't have, I believe, bus rapid transit. So how are they going to react? Well, cities in Denver are almost forced to build to keep up with this new state law. Will Colorado Springs do the same thing and voluntarily say, hey, how about we grow more density in the areas that people are moving to the most? It'll be curious to see.
It will be. Okay, now it is time for us to go down the line and talk about some of the highs and the lows of this week. We will start with the low points. Patty, you're up first.
Well, Danielle Jurinsky is a controversial Aurora City Councilwoman, but she did not deserve what happened to her a couple years ago when Robin Nicita, a social worker in Arapahoe County, also happened to be at the time the girlfriend of the woman who happened to be the police chief at the time, made false accusations of child abuse against Jurinsky. Nicita was just sentenced to 4 years in prison last Friday after we taped the show. Good. That was outrageous.
The University of Colorado has announced 6 scholarships in honor of 6 terrorist bombers from Boulder in 1974.
Really?
Yes.
I had not heard that.
Los Seis, they call them. Did a lot of bombing, eventually blew themselves up with poor quality control.
Okay. All right. Ed?
Seems everyone is just tuning into the fact that gas is going to get more expensive in the Northern Front Range, as much as 60 cents per gallon because of an EPA mandate to use reformulated gas because we don't meet ozone standards here. And look, Governor Polis deserves the criticism he's getting for waiting too long to ask for a waiver and for, frankly, in 2019, refusing to ask for a continuation of the waiver on meeting those standards. But at the same point, he made a very valid case in a letter to the EPA that not only is this going to hurt the poorest along the Front Range the most with these prices going up, but this is going to do very little to solve our air quality problems. The EPA needs to relook at this program and decide, is this really the best way to attack air quality?
I think we're going to be talking about that a lot this summer. Okay, Laura.
Well, I noted that that RTD is losing its free fare program for this summer that is aimed at reducing the ozone and happens during the highest ozone season, July and August. And the funding bill that went through the legislature this year was cut. And so with that cut, they lost their program for everyone to receive free RTD fare. The silver lining, though, if there is one, is that the youth will be able to the youth program for free RTD rides will continue as a year-round program.
Okay, all right. Something positive, Patty.
Use that last cheap gas or ride your bicycle to get to the Outside Festival, which is in Civic Center Park. First one, supposed to be like the South by Southwest of the outdoor recreation industry. Should be great this weekend.
And the weather is going to be perfect.
Beautiful.
Ms. Patricia Calhoun has recently become the longest-running television character in the history of Denver, and she even exceeds Russ Scott, who was the beloved Blinky the Clown. So, Ms. Calhoun, you're the greatest of all time, and we salute you.
Because you've been on this show for so long?
Yes, that's
true. Amazing. More
Or
than
I'm a bigger clown than Blinky.
we love you. We love you, love you.
Wow, I don't know how I follow that.
Right, that's
but
amazing.
I'm still going to give a shout out to groups such as EPIC, that's Execs Partnering in Childcare, for leading to yesterday's signing of House Bill 1237, which is a bill that tries to attack the childcare problem in different ways, particularly by getting local governments to consider how we actually get childcare facilities into planning, which is a huge obstacle right now. Colorado is 90,000 childcare slots short of what it needs. And so many parents, particularly women, are being kept out of the workforce because of this. This is a problem we have to solve, and this is a good start.
90,000?
90,000.
Whoa, okay, all right.
Well, if you haven't heard, the 99ers bar is opening soon on East Colfax, and it is recognizing the U.S. women's soccer team that won the World Cup in 1999 against China. I happened to be at the Rose Bowl for that 1999 game. I will tell you, I cried at the when it was at the second overtime final kick, penalty kicks. And there's two women that are opening the bar. That's at the first premier women's sports bar. And if you can't make the game of the U.S. women's team on Saturday at Dick's Sporting Goods, they're doing a pop-up at Lady Justice Brewing down in Littleton. And we should all go support this tremendous new opening that's going to happen on East Colfax.
Another women-owned business.
Yes.
I got the chills imagining that you were there.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
That is so cool. Okay, so I'm playing off of Laura. The highlight for me is the opportunity for all of us to come together and root on some amazing Coloradans. We have hometown soccer phenoms Lindsay Horan, Mallory Swanson, and Sophia Smith, and the rest of Team USA coming here. But it's just so great with these three young ladies from Colorado who are just awesome, and my daughter is so excited. So excited. So cheers to everyone at 99, to our soccer team, and you guys have a great weekend. Thank you, panel, for coming in. We appreciate it. Thank you at home for listening or to our podcast or watching on air or any of the devices that we have. Or have a great weekend, and we will see you here next week on PBS 12.
PBS 12 believes in the power of original, local programming. Help us bring more shows, like the one you just watched, by donating at pbs12.org/program support today.